A man is in jail after being charged in a deadly domestic disturbance in Affton. He's accused of killing a woman police say he was dating.
My baby was taken away from me by a young man, supposed to have been her friend that she was taking care of, that she had so much, she wasn't in love or none of that. It was just about the heart and the care that she was trying to support him and help him.
On the night of April 24th, 2025, police responded to a home on Grace Avenue in Affton, Missouri, after receiving a report of a disturbance. When officers arrived, they found Kelsey Elem with a gunshot wound. She was taken to a hospital where she later died. According to investigators, the events leading up to the shooting began with an argument between Kelsey and her boyfriend, Martino Lewis. A witness reported hearing the couple arguing and seeing Lewis strike Kelsey.
Bow, bow. There was nothing about drop on the floor. No. Nothing.
The witness also told police that Kelsey appeared frightened and asked them to call 911, saying she was going to get her gun. While the witness was still on the phone with emergency dispatchers, a single gunshot was heard. Investigators allege that Lewis left the home immediately after the shooting and drove away in Kelsey's vehicle. They also say he later gave the firearm to another person and told investigators that Kelsey had been shot while they were driving and that he took her to the hospital. According to court documents, detectives found evidence that they say did not support that account. Subscribe to Matrix Crime and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our new case.
He the one that killed my sister. He the one that killed my sister. He did something to my sister. He did something to my sister to make her react, and he killed my sister.
Kelsey Elem was 25 years old at the time of her death. She lived in the Affton area of St. Louis County, a modest, close-knit community on the southwestern edge of the city. By all accounts available in the public record, she was in a romantic relationship with Martino Lewis, a 21-year-old man. The two had been dating for some period of time before the night that would end Kelsey's life, though the exact length of their relationship is not specified anywhere in the public court filings. What is known is limited to the bare facts that prosecutors have laid out in the case against Lewis. Whether the couple lived together permanently, whether they split time between residences, or whether there had been any prior police involvement in their relationship, none of that has been made public. These are the kinds of details that often surface later as a case moves through pre-trial hearings and eventually toward trial. But for now, they remain gaps in the record. What the charging documents do establish is a narrower, more specific set of facts about the relationship's final chapter. On the night of the shooting, the couple argued. According to the account given to police, that argument became physical, and an eyewitness who was present, or at least close enough to witness the unfolding situation, later described Kelsey as frightened during the incident. That single detail, a witness's description of fear, is one of the pieces of evidence that has made its way into the public understanding of this case. But it's important to be precise about what has and has not been established. No verified public records point to a documented history of long-term abuse between Kelsey and Lewis. There are no restraining orders on file that have been made public. There are no prior domestic violence convictions connecting the two of them. And there are no documented threats predating the night of the shooting that have surfaced in court records. This doesn't mean those things didn't exist. It simply means that, as of the most recent publicly available information, they have not been confirmed or entered into the record. Turning to Martino Lewis himself, the public record is even thinner. He was 21 years old, and he was Kelsey's boyfriend. Beyond that, very little verified background information has been released about him. Not his employment history, not his education, not any prior criminal record. not his family background. In many homicide cases, especially in the early stages, investigators and prosecutors focus their public statements narrowly on the facts of the incident itself, saving broader background investigation for the discovery process and eventual trial preparation. That appears to be exactly what has happened here. The public conversation around this case, at least from official sources, has centered almost entirely on the hours leading up to the shooting itself, and what happened immediately afterward. So let's walk through those hours as closely as the public record allows. On the evening of April the 24th, 2025, Lewis and Kelsey were together at a residence on Grace Avenue. At some point during that evening, a dispute developed between them. The public record does not disclose what triggered the argument. There's no confirmed detail about the subject matter, no confirmed detail about how long tensions had been building before that night, and no confirmed detail about whether this was an isolated disagreement or part of a longer pattern. All that investigators have said, and all that has made it into the charging documents, is that a dispute began. What happened next is where the account becomes more specific, because it comes from someone who was there, a witness. According to that witness's statements, they heard the couple arguing. They say they witnessed Lewis strike Kelsey, and they observed Kelsey appearing scared in the moments that followed. This is a critical point in the timeline, because it's the pivot from a verbal argument to something the witness perceived as physically threatening. According to the court documents, Kelsey then made a specific request of the witness. She asked them to call 911. And in that same account, the witness reported that Kelsey said something else, that she was, in her words, going to get her gun. That statement, more than almost any other detail in this case, has drawn attention and speculation. But here's what the public record does not clarify: whether Kelsey actually reached the firearm, where the gun was located before this moment, or whether she was in possession of it when she was ultimately shot. These are open questions. They may be answered as the case proceeds, through forensic testimony, through further witness statements, through evidence that hasn't yet been made public. But as of now, they remain unresolved. What happened in the next moments is the case's central, irreversible event. While the witness remained on the phone with 911 dispatchers, while help was already being summoned, a single gunshot was heard. The witness, still on that call, reportedly observed Lewis leaving the residence. They say they saw him get into Kelsey's vehicle, and they say they watched him drive away. Police response followed almost immediately. Officers were dispatched to the scene in response to a reported disturbance that had escalated into a shooting. When they arrived, they located Kelsey suffering from a gunshot wound. She was transported to a hospital where medical personnel worked to save her. Despite those emergency efforts, she died from her injuries. In the immediate aftermath, according to investigators, Lewis's actions formed a pattern that prosecutors would later use to build their case. First, he allegedly fled the scene immediately after the shooting, leaving the residence where Kelsey lay wounded. Second, police allege that he left in her vehicle, driving away from Grace Avenue in the car that belonged to the woman he had just shot. And third, investigators allege that at some point after leaving, Lewis handed the firearm off to another individual. Authorities have not publicly identified who that person is. Whether they were a friend, a family member, or someone else entirely connected to Lewis remains part of an investigation that has not been fully disclosed to the public. Then comes what investigators describe as a false account. According to the allegations, Lewis later claimed that Kelsey had been shot while the two of them were driving together, not at the residence on Grace Avenue, but in a moving vehicle. He allegedly stated that he had taken her to the hospital himself after the shooting occurred. But when investigators examined the evidence, the witnesses' account, the location where police found Kelsey, the timeline established by the 911 call, that version of events did not hold up. Police determined that Lewis's story was inconsistent with what the evidence actually showed. From there, the investigation moved into its more procedural phase. Investigators processed the residence on Grace Avenue and the surrounding area, collecting whatever physical evidence they could recover from the scene. The specifics of what was gathered, down to individual items or observations, have not been fully disclosed to the public, which is standard practice in an active homicide investigation. Police also conducted witness interviews, speaking with the individual who had called 911 and with other people connected to the case. That original eyewitness became one of the central sources supporting the probable cause statement that would ultimately be used to charge Lewis. Among the pieces of evidence that have been confirmed publicly, 3 stand out. The first is the 911 call itself. Because the witness stayed on the line with emergency dispatch throughout the incident, there is a real-time record of the sequence of events, the argument, and then, at a specific and documented moment, the gunshot. That timing has become an important piece of evidence in establishing exactly what happened and when. The second is the vehicle. Lewis was later found driving Kelsey's car, which investigators point to as evidence supporting the allegation that he fled the scene in her vehicle rather than his own. And the third is the firearm itself. Investigators allege that Lewis transferred the gun to another person after leaving the residence, though authorities have not publicly described the ballistic findings connected to that weapon, any fingerprint evidence, any DNA evidence, or information about who legally owned the firearm. As for statements made by Lewis himself, court documents indicate that he admitted a physical altercation occurred between him and Kelsey that night. However, investigators say his account of how the shooting itself happened conflicted with the evidence they gathered, specifically his claim that Kelsey was shot while the two were driving, rather than at the residence. Beyond that admission and that disputed claim, no additional statements from Lewis have been publicly released. Lewis was arrested in the city of St. Louis. At the time of his arrest, police say he was still in possession of Kelsey's vehicle, the same car the witness reported seeing him drive away in after the gunshot was heard. Following his arrest, the St. Louis County Prosecuting Attorney's Office filed 3 charges against Martino Lewis. The first is second-degree murder, alleging that he knowingly caused Kelsey's death. The second is armed criminal action, a charge tied to the alleged use of a firearm during the commission of a felony. And the third is third-degree domestic assault, connected to the physical altercation that investigators say preceded the shooting. The case then moved into the court system. Lewis made an initial appearance before a judge following his arrest. Public reporting indicates that he was held pending further proceedings, though anyone following the case closely should check current court records for the latest bond determinations, since those details can change as a case progresses. As of the most recent publicly available information, the criminal case remains pending. No jury trial has concluded. No verdict has been reached. Martino Lewis, like any defendant, is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty in a court of law. On the forensic side, only limited information has made its way into the public record. What has been confirmed is straightforward and tragic. Kelsey died from a gunshot wound. What has not been released publicly includes the autopsy details, any trajectory analysis that might clarify the exact circumstances of the shooting, toxicology results, gunshot residue findings, or any ballistic comparison results tying the recovered firearm to the fatal shot. These are the kinds of forensic details that typically emerge as a case moves closer to trial, entered into evidence and argued over by both prosecution and defense. For now, the public simply doesn't have access to them. That brings us to the question that so often hangs over cases like this one. Why? What was the motive? And here, it's important to be exact about what is known and what isn't. Investigators have not publicly identified a definitive motive in this case. What has been verified is limited to the sequence we've already walked through. A domestic argument occurred, that confrontation allegedly turned physical, and a fatal shooting followed shortly afterward. No official source, not the police department, not the prosecuting attorney's office, not any court filing, has confirmed a motive involving jealousy, infidelity, financial disputes, a hidden relationship, or any kind of secret that Lewis allegedly wanted to keep concealed. Any claims along those lines, wherever they might circulate, remain unverified and are not supported by the public record in this case. What has resonated in the wake of Kelsey's death is less about a specific motive and more about the broader pattern the case represents. This was a case that drew public attention for several converging reasons. The young age of both people involved, the alleged domestic violence context surrounding the incident, and the speed with which an argument escalated into a fatal shooting. A transition that, according to the timeline supported by the 911 call, took place over the course of a single evening. In the aftermath, the case renewed local conversations about recognizing the warning signs of intimate partner violence and about the importance of witnesses feeling empowered to call for help the moment a domestic dispute begins to escalate. In this instance, a witness did stay on the line with 911, and that decision produced the time-stamped record that has become central to how investigators and prosecutors have reconstructed the final moments of Kelsey Elem's life.